Welcome to r/Maliciouscompliance, where your wish is my command. I recently dined at a pizza chain in the UK that brags about being express service. After waiting 45 minutes to be served drinks in a fairly empty store, we asked for a small portion of garlic dough balls as we had kids with us who were starving. 20 minutes later, we get the dough balls, and it's another 15 to 20 minutes before we leave because after a total of 1 hour and a half, we had no service, and they charged us for the largest platter of dough balls they had. My partner filed a complaint to office, so they sent us 2 vouchers for free pizza. Now, I work in the city center, so I thought I'd pick one up for lunch and eat it at my desk. I returned to the store and the same rude waiter, whom I'm assuming remembered me as his face turned to a scowl when he saw me, greeted me. I asked for my pizza. He looked at the voucher and said, "I can't take it away, it's only to dine in." I argued, asked him to show me where it said anything like that on the voucher, pointing out the part where it said suitable for collection, and he was having none of it. I asked for a manager. He said he was acting manager. So I relented and said I'd take a seat and ordered my pizza. 5 minutes later, it comes out. I take a bite and said I'm full. I'd like to take my leftovers. The guy was fuming, but had to do so. I did the exact same thing the next day as well. Not very exciting, but it felt good. Edit. To all the spit posts, the ovens are in the front, so you watch them make your pizza. And you bet I was watching. I'm glad you clarified that because I was literally just about to make that joke. Our next Reddit post is from virusoverload. Let's set the scene. So this was a few years back. I have quite a few tattoos. Basically, on my chest, my upper back, top half sleeves, and one on the inside of each forearm, about 15 centimeters across. These last 2 are what started it all. I worked for a cinema chain for a long time, always had tattoos. I landed myself a management role, more like a supervisor. The standard uniform was a black shirt and black trousers. I prefer a short sleeve shirt due to being a bigger guy and cinemas being bloody hot. My site manager quite liked my tattoos and other quirks that I had. My area manager, however, did not. She would come into the site, walk past 8 other staff with full sleeve tattoos, and make a beeline straight to me, stating that my tattoos need covering up, and I quote, "They're not offensive, just a lot of people don't like them." Now, my tattoos aren't offensive, they're just patterns. She informed me that I had to wear long sleeves to cover them up, otherwise I would face disciplinary action. I had read the employee handbook a few times because of other petty stuff, so I know it was the manager's decision, my site manager. But she decided to overrule it. What she forgot was that just because the normal retail staff had to wear black, management was allowed to wear white. Just nobody did because it was hard to keep clean. So what should I do? I know. Let's go and buy the thinnest, cheapest, most see-through white long sleeve shirt I can find. Now, if you could only see her face when she came in next, when I'm basically wearing a shirt more see-through than tracing paper. I'm talking, you can see the color shift from my individual chest hairs. And all my tattoos were on show for everyone to see while I stood behind the tills talking to customers. Needless to say, I got to wear my short-sleeved black shirt again after that. Our next Reddit post is from SaltySolicitor. Before I was a lawyer, I had an internship and was supervised under a man named Bob, who resented my continued existence in his department and saw me as dead weight. This is largely true of legal interns who tend to create work rather than solve problems. However, Bob would give me half in an assignment, refuse to clarify his instructions, and then sigh in exasperation when I wasn't able to literally read his mind or solve the issue. If I suggested another or different way to do things, he would dig in his heels just for the sake of doing so, even on things where taking a hard stance made no sense. One day, I was assigned to send a large volume of files to the company's outside lawyers. After gathering documents from various company representatives, I realized that they were too voluminous to email. When I told Bob that I needed to put them on a flash drive, he snapped that they must be submitted via email today. I knew that our company would accept emails up to 30 megabytes from internal sources, but the server would reject anything external over 15 megabytes. And I suspected the law firm servers were set up the same way. Bob wouldn't hear it. What are you talking about? I send huge files all the time. Just do it. Sure thing, Bob. I confirmed the email size limit with the law firm, then lovingly, painstakingly parsed out the files for individual emails. I waited until Bob was in a meeting and started shotgunning privilege/confidential email 1 of 47 messages to the firm and copying Bob. They emailed me in a panic, begging me to stop and telling me that a flash drive would be great. I told them that, per Bob, the messages must be emailed. Bob eventually sent a very terse reply, instructing the firm to send a courier over so that the flash drive could be picked up. Our next Reddit post is from 01A. I used to work as an administrator in a secondary school in the US, grades 9 to 12. Around 10 years ago, we were in a school that didn't have a specific zone or neighborhood, so to speak. Some of our students lived 30 to 45 minutes from the school, which made it necessary for us to sometimes conduct business with parents or guardians over the phone as opposed to in person. One day, I met with a senior, grade 12, who was in a class that he and his father had deemed too hard for him. And since they didn't want it impacting his ability to attend college, asked for him to be changed out of the class. It was early in the semester, and there was plenty of space available in other courses, so I had no problem doing it after a conversation over the phone with his father. The student was a good guy, and he was totally grateful to me for helping him out. He would now get to enjoy his last year a little more, with one less difficult class to worry about. The next day, I get a phone call in my office from the kid's mom, who is irate. She spends approximately 5 minutes berating me about changing his schedule. I indicated to her that dad was on the contact list for her son, and he was allowed to make these decisions if he chose to do so. She is the person who put dad on there several years before. Evidently, mom had put dad on the list before their divorce. She had raised the child over the last several years by herself, according to her, and she should make all the decisions. I didn't know this, and the records didn't reflect it. Since she knew this argument wasn't going to work, the next objection was against our policy of making decisions over the phone. The conversation went something like this. How do you know for sure it was his dad on the phone? There's no way you can be sure. I can't believe you would ever make a decision like this without a parent present. By doing this over the phone, you could be speaking to anyone. She continued on, and I tried to explain that it's necessary at times to use the phone, since parents work in another town and may have to travel an hour or more to get to the school. Well, she wasn't buying it. So finally, I relented. Ma'am, you're right. I will no longer make decisions like this over the phone. I'm going to insist parents come in and meet with me in person. Good. Now I need my son to be put back into the class he was in originally. Ma'am, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come in and meet with me. I'm no longer changing schedules over the phone. How do I know you're this student's mother? I can't do that! I live 45 minutes from the school and I work every day. It was at this point she dropped all of her objections. Cue up surprise Pikachu face. Our next Reddit post is from Basket Case. I received an unsolicited call earlier this morning from a gentleman named Dan. Dan worked for Microsoft Security and was calling to let me know that my computer had been downloading malicious software. And because I was such a loyal customer, he would be walking me through the steps to remove the software and fix my computer. In case you didn't guess, Dan did not work for Microsoft. My computer was not infected and he was not going to help me. Our conversation began. Are you near your computer right now? Yes, why? I'd like to help you check it for issues. Okay, give me a minute. At this point, I spent a couple minutes finding my laptop and getting it booted up. Really, it only took about 20 seconds, but Dan didn't need to know this. Once I was at my laptop, Dan continued. What do you see on your screen right now? Well, I see my desktop. At this point, Dan tried to continue with the script, but I had not told Dan everything that was on my screen, so I continued. There's a clock in the bottom left corner. The time says 10:30 a.m. The date is December 3rd, 2017. There's a Wi-Fi signal with full bars. There's a volume meter, but I have it muted right now. There's a battery indicator showing my laptop is 27% charged. Dan tried in vain to interrupt me, but there was still more things to tell him. There's an icon called My Computer, an icon called Recycle Bin, an icon called Google Chrome. You can see where this is going. I proceeded to read off to Dan each and every icon, shortcut, folder, and file that was currently displayed on my screen. Dan never got a chance to get a word in edgewise. Finally, after about 4 or 5 minutes of meticulously letting Dan know exactly what was on my screen, he asked me a question. Can you right-click on My Computer? Sure, no problem. Do you know where that would be located? It should be on your desktop. I know, but I can't find it. Do you remember what it was next to when I described everything to you? It should be next to Recycle Bin. No, Google Chrome is next to the Recycle Bin. After a few more minutes, Dan successfully navigated me into the start menu to open up a run box. Okay, there should be a field in the run box. Is it empty? No, it has something written already. What does it say? The first one says MS Info 32. The second one says CMD. The third one says regedit. After going through all the 11 to 12 items in my runbox history, Dan let me know that he would need to call me back in a few minutes. Despite my pleas for help, Dan hung up. Apparently, I wasn't supposed to follow his directions so well. And then we have a similar post from Holden Akari down in the comments. My pops did something like this a while back. He strung the guy along and played the role of a typical guy who doesn't understand computers. It went on for over an hour. When my dad finally dropped something like, "Oh, you want me in front of a computer? I thought you meant the TV." The guy hung up after that. Our next Reddit post is from DesRep. At my old workplace, we had a truck driver. We'll call him Jim for no particular reason. Our director had decided to cut down on the amount of manpower in the production unit to try and squeeze some more money out of it. One of the people laid off was a storage worker, and the director then wanted Jim to take over on storage and make the big truck more of a whoever needs it uses it kind of thing, as opposed to having one man who mans it for the majority of the time. Though driving the truck only took about half of Jim's day, and the rest of the time he did all kinds of other things around the company that needed doing. Maintenance, cleaning the yard, cutting the grass, etc. Now, my boss had made a fair fuss about this during the meetings where this was decided, since Jim, being on that truck, was a very good thing for the company. But alas, director didn't want to listen. They then had a meeting where Jim and the 3 people who were the likely candidates for using the truck were informed of this change. The storage worker had been fired the same day. Now, nobody was really happy about this. One of the practical problems is when you have multiple people using a tool, whether it be a hammer, a power drill, or a truck, it becomes a mess to coordinate. Who needs it when, who handles what in regards to maintenance, and so on and so on. But none were more unhappy than Jim, and he quite openly said that storage worker wasn't his job. To which the director made one of many big mistakes in this whole streamlining process he was doing to the production unit. He pulled out the contract that had a highlighted work in the production part. So what kind of malicious compliance does a pissed off former truck driver get up to? Well, glad you asked. Very simply, he stopped doing anything that wasn't related to production. Examples of minor things Jim stopped doing. Buying basic groceries for the production office, milk, sugar, etc. He stopped bringing breakfast to the production workers. Jim drove to a local sandwich maker and picked up breakfast and lunch for most of the production, meaning that now everybody went there on their own, creating massive amounts of delay in every department. Maintaining order in the yard so everything stored out there was easy to find and traffic could go through easily. But the very best thing he stopped was clearing away snow. You see, one of the many things Jim did was if there was a forecast for snow, he'd set an alarm for 4 a.m. only to look out the window. And if he needed to clear snow, he'd just go to work and make sure the snow was cleared and the roads salted for when everyone else arrived, and that he also stopped. And this particular year, winter hit us pretty suddenly. So there was quite a bit of snow and ice all over the place, including the main office building's parking lot. Now Jim, being the absolute champ that he was, had made sure that the production unit had been cleared, but left the main office building on the other side of the road to fend for itself. And since we in the production line get in earlier than the office people did, we could stand there and watch as they started arriving. And half their parking spots had so much snow in them that they were unusable. And how their cars just skipped around on the ice under the snow. It was glorious. 3 cars were lightly damaged, and one took a pretty hefty hit as he clipped the corner of the concrete building. And no less than 9 people fell on the ice, including the director himself, which resulted in about 45 production workers standing inside our machine hall almost pissing themselves laughing. Edit, I forgot to mention a little fun thing. Later that day, an email was sent out across the whole company asking if anyone knew why the external contractor we had hired to clear the snow had stopped. Apparently, the office nuts had no clue that it was Jim who cleared the snow for them every morning during the winter. And then OP further clarifies that Jim ended up quitting the job. And management streamlined things so much that now the company is on the verge of shutting down. A good example is them writing an angry email demanding that production was to handle all snow removal henceforth, which none of them did because it wasn't in anyone's contract. Whoops. That was r/malicious compliance, and if you want to maliciously comply, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.